The Terrible Two Go Wild. Chapter 12. The woods in summer are full of life. A sharp observer can spot raccoons, opossums, deer, skunks, coyotes, cows, moo, cougars, and if you're lucky, school principals. Look behind the bushes, there's one now. A wonderful specimen, brand new boots, brand new socks, a bright red power socks, brand new shorts, and brand new backpack. A walking stick that was a very old branch, but a walking stick was brand new. A brand new sunburn, purplish. This principal's name is Principal Barkin. He was the father of Josh Barkin and the principal of Yanni Valley Science and Letters Academy, a school is that not in this book. On this morning, already warm, he leaned on his walking stick and breathed the forest air. Ah, wildflowers and cows, said Principal Barkin to nobody because he was hiking alone. He consulted a brand new compass and a brand new trail map. He checked the coordinates against the Global Protecting Satellite hiking aid, which is very expensive and yes, brand new. Excellent, he said. Yes, precisely as expected. He survived the woods and smiled. Principal Barkin was lost. But no matter, a principal is never truly lost. In times of uncertainty, a good leader randomly chooses a direction and pursues it boldly, no matter where it leads. This was a lesson he learned from his own father, whom he had complicated feelings about, and a lesson he pressed on to his son, whom he had complicated feelings about. But enough feeling. More walking. Principal Barkin spun around and pointed his arm out. West, he grimaced. It was a rough path, but west it would have to be. He pulled up his socks and marched forth, singing a new song he made up called The Ballad of Wandering Principal. Dee-dee-dee-dee, no school for me. It's summer for school principals. Yes, dearie, I'm totally free, a wandering school principal. Summertime is here again. School principals are free. The birds are singing in trees, and so are school principals, not in trees, but on the ground. School principals cannot fly, but what if they could? That would be neat. A high-flying school principal, climbing high like state test scores at a school with a good principal. I flap my arms and fly above the classrooms and gymnasium. The students will look up at me and say that man is my principal. And don't forget the faculty and stuff and PTA. I'll be pride of the whole school. School. Good gracious, I miss school. Principal Barkin was lost in more ways than one. Over hills, through what he assumed were dales, Principal Barkin wandered through the greenwood till he reached a little stream. With his walking stick, he plumbed its depths. He murmured disapprovingly. Not too deep, he said, but these are brand new socks. He scanned up and down the bank, searching for some ultimate passage. A log, he exclaimed, startling a family of rabbits. Thank you, Mother Nature. He wobbled as he crossed the log and had to steady himself with the stick. Look at me, he cried, once again startling the rabbits who had been settled back in their burrow. Crossing a long log bridge was a great stick. For a moment he felt like a boy again, not because he crossed a lot of log bridges, or held a lot of sticks as a kid. No, nothing of the kind. In fact, Principal Barkin, then known as Little Berry Barkin, had been forbidden from the forest. His father, then known as Principal Barkin, had a saying, nature puts humans in contact with limits of her power and should therefore be avoided. But the scene, the stick, the log, the creek, reminded Principal Barkin of an adventure novels he used to read as a boy. Late at night, up in his room, books he bought made him endless joy, until his father found out and ended the joy with another saying. Adventure stories remind us of the hurly-burly that lies beneath the order of everyday life and are thus unsuitable for children and adults. His father had donated the books to the library of a rival school. I wonder, Principal Barkin wondered, if some jolly fellow will emerge from these woods and try to cross this log in my opposite direction. I will knock him on the crown with my walking stick. Then he'll invite me to join his merry band. Of course, he wasn't expecting a jolly fellow to emerge from our woods, which was good, because one didn't. The rabbits were only living creatures within earshot, and they were digging up into the earth, trying to get far away from this loud man as possible. Principal Barkin sighed wistfully and continued on his journey. Soon enough, he reached the bramble patch. Blackberries, said Principal Barkin. He checked his compass, just as he feared. His path west led right into thorny bushes. It's too bad there's no sort of secret path to get me through these brambles. There were one, as you probably guessed. This blackberry patch was described on page 68. Principal Barkin didn't know about the secret path, though, because it was a secret. Ah, well, said Principal Barkin, I will traverse this bare patch like a fox. And this he did, suffering many painful nicks and cuts. Ouch, said Principal Barkin. I'll just, ow, yeep. Okay, maybe I turn back and... Oh, no, goodness. He is glad to make it to the other side of the brambles, and even gladder when his path westward led him through a lane in a little green glade. Look at the brook, look at that cave. I mean, this is Johnny Valley Regal Park, an outdoor recreational area or a fairy wonder. It's a rhetorical question, which was good, because nobody around was to answer it. Still, even though he was in the Yanni Valley Botanical Park, an outdoor residential area, Principal Barkin couldn't help imagining a fairy queen awaking to the sound of his voice and falling madly in love with him, and assigning several fairy children to dote on him. Fetch me some honey, he said to the fairy children, and also, why are you in school? And they would tell him there weren't such things at school for fairies. And he would say, outrageous, and he would build them a school out of sticks and acorns and things, with a place where the fairies would learn, and he would be their school principal. And the fairy queen would ask him to be her king, and he would say, no, my lady, a principal is all I am, and all I ever wanted to be. But she made him king anyway. Well, said Principal Barkin, he suddenly remembered that he should call his wife, Mrs. Barkin, if he ever found some cell service in this forest. Principal Barkin decided that the glade would be an enchanting spot to rest a while, so he strolled across the grass and probably fell into a large hole. Chapter 13. On the same day, at almost the same time, in a different part of the woods, another Barkin, Josh Barkin, was gloating. He was gloating quietly. This was difficult for him because he was by nature a loud glosser, but his current situation demanded itself. The situation was this: crouching behind the sub, spying on Miles Murphy and Miles Parks. He had found him after 2 weeks of patrols in the forest, kick after kick of trampling to plants, slapping mosquitoes, and drinking water that had been warmed up in his canteen and so felt gross in his mouth. Josh Barkin had practically stumbled right over these two nimbuses. No, not stumbled. Josh Barkin had precisely targeted those two nimbuses. He considers signaling splinters and mudflap, who was scouting somewhere elsewhere, but he didn't want to risk attracting attention. Plus, he assigned the candidates part of the forest that were far away and pretty hard to get to. The whistling had given Miles and Niles away. Josh had heard whistling near a shady spot under the tree he had been patrolling, and he went to investigate. Josh found Miles and Niles merrily hiking a path that ran into Yanni Valley, yelling a push-up camp. The arena right by the camp was Josh's territory to patrol. They were carrying a ladder like a couple of dwarfs. Ladder clanged. The boys whistled. These two nimbuses was not stealthy at all, and they would lead him right to their headquarters. Pish! The terrible two, more like the terrible at hiding two. Josh chuckled at his own joke, then angrily stushed himself. Miles and Niles were getting ahead of him, so he left his cover and crept after them. Miles whistled. Ooh, what a good one, said Niles. Niles wished back, and the boys started laughing. I can't get the notes right, said Niles. That's true, said Miles. You can't. Niles carried the front of the ladder, while Miles carried the back. How did you do it? Niles asked. How do you control the notes? Miles shrugged. I just do it with my mouth muscles. But how? Describe how. I can't describe it. I just do it. I guess I'm a prodigy. Said Niles. He tried whistling again, and then they both started laughing. What the heck kind of secret army signal is this? Josh thought the end from a news drop. They don't sound like turkey vultures or any other kind of bird. Miles and Niles weren't practicing secret army signals. They were trying to whistle like Arnoscio Alessino Cardinali. Niles dropped his end of the ladder and pointed at a tall tree just off the path. Look, that's one. Miles dropped his end of the ladder. They both ran over to the tree and peered up into its branches. This is a jack pine? Miles asked. Yeah, said Niles. It looks just like a normal tree. Yeah, it looks like it on the surface. Oh boy. Miles rolled his eyes. Oh boy. Do you have that pocket knife? Niles asked. Miles reached into his pocket and got the knife. Niles used it to pry off some bark from the tree. Pry off some bark from the trunk of the tree. I don't know, man, Miles said. No, it's true. It has something to do with the minerals in the ground that makes them grow. Okay, said Miles. You'll see, said Niles. Niles came stripping the bark of the tree. Josh had no idea what the little nimbus was up to, but whatever it was not going well. As Niles grew more and more frustrated, he pulled up the pieces at the furious pace. Miles began whistling again. Niles glared at him. Sorry, said Miles. Josh wished Miles and Niles would just give up and head back to their secret headquarters so he could beat them up and steal his backpack. Boomtown, said Niles. The little bond nimbus had pried off a piece of bark and pulled a flat gold nugget right out of the tree. Miles's eyes got wide. Josh's eyes got wider. Wow, said Miles. Niles held the nugget between his thumb and forefinger. Told you, these trees only grow where there's gold in the ground. It gets stuck in their bark and when they're scooting up through the dirt. There should be even more nuggets up higher. Let me see that, said Miles. He took the knife back. The boys set their ladder against the pine. Miles climbed up until he reached its lowest branches, which was stuck straight out from the trunk a good 12 feet above the ground. Miles hopped from limb to limb until he reached a sturdy bark. He shimmered to the spot where a branch met trunk, and his legs wrapped tightly around the bark. Began to work at the bark with his knife. It wasn't long before Miles cackled gleefully. Look at this! Miles tossed a nugget down to Niles. It was even bigger than the first one. How much do you think that's worth? Miles asked. Josh was wondering the exact same thing. I don't know, said Niles. A lot. Well, there's more up here, a lot more. We should have built a backpack. We should go to the HQ and get mine, Niles said. Miles sat high in the tree and thought about it. All right, he said, but let's hurry. Josh Perkins' mouth was open wide. His heart was beating fast. His face was purpling spotchily. He watched Miles Murphy shimmering down the tree and slide down the ladder, which his little friend holds steadily with 2 hands. The boys hurried off on the trail into the woods. They left their ladder leaning against the tree. This was a dilemma. Think, Josh thought. He had 2 options. Plan 1. Follow Nimbuses to their headquarters. Take the flag back, beat them up, come back to the tree and steal their gold. That was a pretty good plan. But there also plan 2. Plan 2. Take the gold now. Hide and watch them discover gold is gone. Follow them back to their headquarters and take back the flag. Beat them up. That was also a great plan. How could he decide? Josh's mom always said Josh was the kind of kid who'd rather eat his dessert first. But what was the dessert here? Stealing a bunch of gold or beating up a couple of nimbuses? They were both dessert. And you know what? Josh's mom was wrong. He wouldn't rather eat this dessert first. He'd rather eat this dessert first and last. Otherwise, you're just eating something gross like carrots at the end of the night when you should be eating dessert. Why eat carrots at all? Why not just eat all desserts? And the great thing about the options lay before him, they were all dessert. Stop thinking, Josh thought. At the Yanni Valley Yelling and Push-Ups camp, campers were expected to be A-OK. Action-oriented kids, hiding behind the strap, cooking up foot meditations were not action-oriented. It felt like something his father would do. Josh probably right about that. And Josh did not want to be like his father. It was time to stop thinking about dessert and time to start eating dessert. And plan 2 had an extra step, which was like more dessert, so he could eat that plan. He stood up. He was a little hungry, but he firmly decided on plan 2. Good thing Miles and Niles had left so long ago it was hard to follow them at this point. Josh clambered up the ladder and lifted himself into the tree. Now, where had that Nimbus digging around with his knife? Josh spied a spot where the trunk was scratched and stripped. It was 5 feet above his head. That Nimbus could have climbed. Josh would have give him that, but so could Josh. Yanni Valley Yelling and Push-Ups camp wasn't just about push-ups. There was a lot of pull-ups, and so Josh had no trouble pulling himself up to the pine branches. Wow, he was up pretty high. Hugging a branch high above the ground sure didn't feel like dessert, but he wasn't gotten to the gold yet. Josh grinned and trimmed along the bow. He crept his pocket knife shattered into his boot under his sock because it looked cooler when he took it out. At least it looked cool when he was on the ground. Getting his foot up to his hand without falling out of the tree took some awkward twisting. But so what? Nobody was watching him. If a kid almost falls out of a tree in the forest, there's nobody to see him. Is it embarrassing? Well, what do you think? Anyway, Josh managed to scratch the life. "Aw, yeah," said Josh. He stabbed the tree. He jimmied the handle and got some bark off. No gold. He stabbed it again and pried a pretty big piece. There was no gold underneath, just more bark. Obviously, this work required patience. 10 minutes later, he still hadn't found any gold. They were just stabbing the tree out of anger. Miles said, "There's a bunch of gold up here. Those 2 nimbuses no trick, I don't." He stared at the knife. wiped the blade on his shorts to get the sap off, and stabbed the tree again. "Hello, Josh," said Niles on the ground. "Hello, Josh," said Miles, who was also on the ground. And who thought it was funny how Niles said hello, but he wasn't sure he'd be able to pull that off. "You look a plum up there." Josh squeezed his scythe tight against the branch, but otherwise managed to play it cool. "What do you Nimbuses want?" "Goodbye, Josh," said Niles. "Yeah, bye, Josh," said Miles. They took the ladder from the tree and began to walk away with it. "This is bad," thought Josh. "This is really bad," he thought. "This is really, really bad." It's not easy to think at the same time. You're realizing you're stuck in a high jack pine. "You Nimbuses may have the ladder," Josh shouted, "but I'm up here with all the gold." The boys stopped. Niles turned toward Josh and gave him a disappointed look. "Josh." "Oh," said Josh. "Right." It was just dawning on Josh that the entire thing had been a prank. But seriously, it was hard to think when you're up in a tree, especially when a light breeze had picked up and the bow were on trembles. Miles and Niles turned to leave once again. "But how do you get the gold in the tree?" Josh shouted after them. "We stuck the nugget in there yesterday," said Niles. "Oh," said Josh. "I know." Josh felt he needed to ambush his domans in these woods, which had perhaps been dismissed after his current predicament. Whatever, he said. "Now when I found you, I'll beat you up even harder. I'll steal my flag and your gold nuggets." Niles reached into his pocket and tossed the 2 nuggets on the floor. "It's just fool's gold, Josh. Come and get it." And with that, Terrible 2 marched off. Miles were whistling a confetti tune. Josh looked down. There was no branches lower than 12 foot off the ground. That was too hard to fell. Josh screeched like an angry turkey vulture. It was Papa Company's secret distress signal, but he soon decided there was no to distress. "Help!" he cried. "Help!"